Hey everyone. I thought it would be cool to make a quick video to show you how I use Include Media in my projects. In particular, how I use a couple of plugins built around Include Media that I find quite handy. So for those of you that don't know what Include Media is, it's basically a SAS library that allows you to define a list of breakpoints in a centralized place, and then use their names to generate media query expressions with a very simple syntax. So to give you a quick example, with Include Media, I would start by declaring a breakpoints map. The library does come with a default set of breakpoints, but in this case I want to create my own. So I'm going to create one called medium and another one called large at 600 and 900 pixels. And then with this, I could just say whenever the viewport width is greater than or equal to medium, I want to change the background color to dark salmon. And you can see that this expression kicks in at 600 pixels as expected. So yeah, as you can see, just a different way of generating a media query. But there is one plugin that I do use quite a lot and I find quite handy, which is called Include Media Columns. And I'm gonna show you what exactly this does by giving you an example. This plugin, what it does is it creates a bunch of classes for me that allow me to specify how a certain component reacts to each of the breakpoints that I've defined in my breakpoints map. For example, if I say in this case that I want to create columns with that divide the viewport in halves and thirds, it allows me to say something like a component is going to be a column. It's going to be a column that by default takes the full width of the page, but then it's going to take half the width of the page once I get to my medium breakpoint, and it takes a third of the width once I get to my large breakpoint. And so I'm going to show you how this can be used to generate like a simple grid, for example. To show you that, I have this class right here that I'm going to use to wrap my columns with. So let's see how exactly this works. So I'm going to create a section for my columns, and then inside I'm going to create the first element, and this is going to be a card, which is a class that I've defined in my CSS here. This is also going to be a column that by default takes 100% of the space, and then takes half the space once we get to medium, and a third of the space once we get to large. I'm going to carry on defining my card here. I'm going to just define like an inner div, just so I can have some padding around the element. I'm going to define a title. I'm going to define some copy as well. And so yeah, this is how my card looks. And if I resize the window here, you'll see that at the smallest breakpoint it takes the full width, but then once the medium breakpoint kicks in, it takes just half the space, and then once the large breakpoint kicks in, it takes a third of the space. And so this plugin allowed us to define the responsive behavior for this component without having to explicitly write media queries. So the whole idea behind this actually was inspired in a post by Harry Roberts, where he talked about using responsive suffixes to define how a component reacts to certain to different breakpoints and to different scenarios. And so I understand that some people don't like the idea of having all these classes appended to an element, but I personally think it's quite handy to to look at this and to instantly see how this component reacts to all the breakpoints that I've defined. And I like how easy it is and how quick it is to define this behavior without having to touch CSS. So I'm gonna go ahead and and just copy this card element. So I'm gonna create a few more. I'm gonna say in this one, actually, I don't want it to ever go to a third of the page. So I want it to just go half. I'm gonna create another one. And so you can see that as expected on our smallest breakpoint, they all stack on top of each other. Once we get here to medium, they take half the width of the page. Once we get to large, these three are configured to take a third, these two are configured to take just half. And so you can see that we managed to define like a simple grid by using this plugin. So let's imagine that we need to run a bit of JavaScript. In this case, let's imagine we need to run a bit of logic when we scroll that will update an element visually. It will do something to an element using JavaScript every time we scroll. Maybe it's an animation, anything we want really. And so I'm going to start by attaching an event to the scroll. Attaching a function to the scroll event. And I'm just gonna do a console log, some operation here. I'm gonna bring up the console, and you can see that maybe I could add a timestamp, so you can see that this is firing multiple times as expected as I'm scrolling the page. But let's imagine, for the sake of this example, that the element that this piece of logic is updating is hidden for this particular breakpoint, for this mobile view. So the fact that we're still running this logic every time we scroll, even though the element that we're updating is not visible at this breakpoint, is kind of a waste of resources, because maybe this is an expensive operation and we're still running it anyway, even though we're not seeing the element. And so one optimization that we could easily add in is we can say, well, only if the width of the window is greater than 600 pixels, which is my medium breakpoint, only then I will run this operation. So you can see that now I'm scrolling and nothing happens, and only when I get to this breakpoint, then the function is firing again. And this works fine, except by hard coding this 600 pixels value in JavaScript, we're sort of violating the dry principle, the don't repeat yourself principle that got us to choose include media in the first place. So in our SAS, we have our breakpoints defined just once in a centralized place, but now we're hard coding this value all over again in JavaScript. So if we do need to change the value of this medium breakpoint, we need to update it in JavaScript and maybe in multiple places in our JavaScript code base. So it's not ideal. And this is where a third plugin that I wanted to talk to you about comes in. It's called Include Media Export, and what it does is it allows you to make use of the breakpoints that you define in SAS over in JavaScript, and it allows you to reason about which breakpoint is currently active and make a decision based on that. And so I would replace this with by using this plugin with IAM for Include Media dot greater than medium. So if this is greater than medium, then run this operation. and you can see that, you know, it still fires this code when I'm on the medium breakpoint. But if I'm not, if I'm on this small, this more basic mobile view, it doesn't run this code at all. And so we get the benefits of doing this optimization, but we're still just using an alias for the breakpoint and not hard coding the value itself. So if we decide to change the value of this breakpoint in Sass, everything will update accordingly. So yeah, I hope you found this this video useful. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll post a link to this pen and to all the repositories. And yeah, thanks for watching.